Welcome, everybody, to the soul of Synth-Pop. And of course, this is our Spotlight series. And I'm super excited because we're kicking off Spotlight series episode 305. And we've got a very, very special guest joining us tonight. But before we introduce our guest, I want to give a very special hey to you, my awesome co-host, Mae de Agua. How are you doing, Mae?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm, just hiding inside because the temperatures have gotten hotter. We were in early summer last time, and now we're in almost real summer, and just hanging out. Spent the last month just milking every last little bit I could out of the last few weeks of my 50th year with concerts and festivals and traveling, and now I'm home, and now I have to clean up my mess, and I still have to put away my suitcase, and well, back
And
on my head.
I don't know anybody that goes to as many music festivals or concerts as you. I mean, you're making all of us look bad, May,
Trying to find more.
right? So, how just real quickly, how was what was it, Cruel World Festival that you went to out there in LA? They had let's see, Billy Idol was there, and wasn't was it Tears for Fears?
That
Uh,
was so Billy Idol was Cruel World last year. I was there for that.
okay,
And Tears for Fears was Darker Waves back in November. I was there
that's
for that
right,
as
that's
well.
right, that's right.
This year, the big names, the end, well, Ministry, they did their With Sympathy and Twitch stuff, and it was still more in their harder style. So it was really interesting. But the big things, the end of the night, Simple Minds, which they were
Ooh,
phenomenal.
ooh,
First time in the US in 6 years, and they do have plans for a tour coming
right.
soon. And then Blondie, which was my first time seeing her. And let me
Mhm.
tell you, this lady's almost 79, and she flubbed a couple of lines and took it so gracefully. Just the look she gave when she did, she was like, whatever, and kept
Mhm.
on going. She was amazing. And then Duran Duran was
Right.
the end, the headliner for the night, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. The weather was beautiful. They had meat there this time because that was the big complaint last year. Everything was vegan, which,
Ah.
you know,
Well, it's California, LA. Come on, right?
yeah. I mean, so yeah, it was really great. It was a great experience.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, May, we've got a real special guest this time around. One of my favorite indie synth pop artists. Just an amazing musician, an amazing songwriter, and on top of that, he's one of the finest human beings that I have the pleasure of being connected with in this wonderful community of independent synth pop. And that gentleman is Mr. Christopher Anton. Chris, how are you doing, buddy? Such a
Uh,
pleasure to have you here.
It's a, it's amazing to be here. Thank you, Jim and May. I appreciate you having me on. And wow, that was quite an introduction. I don't know if I'm deserving of that, but I appreciate you both, and I thank you so much.
Right
Um,
on. It's
yeah.
it's it's so nice to have you here, and I feel kind of jealous because if unless I'm mistaken, May, you've actually had a chance to see Christopher Anton perform, have you not?
I have a few times, both as just Christopher Anton and Donna Jean, and then also Bry joined them once for one show. I've seen them. I've seen Chris doing the Route 101, the Depeche Mode tribute band, and I don't think I've seen the Mr. Wonderful act. But those are the two, and I've seen them a couple of times, and I just bought my tickets for the next show here in San Antonio. I think is it next month? I
Oh,
don't know.
awesome. Yeah, it's the 28th of June.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks for
good.
the reminder.
That'll be awesome to see you.
Right.
Yeah, I try to do too much basically as well. But the Mr. Wonderful band was a cover band I did for 2 years, but I quit that one because it was just too much. It was just getting to be too much. These things, the tributes and the cover band that I did, were just things I do because I love music and I love performing and I love live music so much, um, that it's just, I mean, it's a joy for me to do those. My heart is really in writing, but of course, if they're bands that I've grown up with and I love, like the Smiths, Morrissey, or Depeche Mode, it's just, for me, it's just a lot of fun to do that.
And your Morrissey or Smith's tribute is Speedway. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called Speedway. Yeah.
That's
That was
that's
that was something I'd wanted to do for like 20 years. It was just something that was always in the back of my mind, and I thought it would be really fun to do it. And my initial idea with it was to do it sort of Morrissey-esque early 1990s when it was very rockabilly.
right.
That was kind of my vision with it. And we started out that way, but then it just kind of morphed into just doing whatever we felt like doing.
That's awesome. Do you consider yourself a bit of a rockabilly fan at all? Just out of curiosity.
I've always loved it
Nice.
since I was 13, but it's just not. Later on, I started getting into to synth pop.
Hmm.
I
Right.
discovered Depeche Mode, and I was really heavily influenced by How to Be a Millionaire at ABC, where they used Fairlights, and that
Right.
type of a sound just really,
Hmm.
really grabbed me. So at that moment in my life, I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I decided this is what I want to do. But I always had, I loved the Stones when I was really young. I wanted to be like Mick Jagger. I know you were talking about like Debbie Harry. Look at Mick Jagger. Isn't he 80? And he's out
Yeah.
there running around. It's really nice to see that, because then I think, well, um, I'm going to be 55 this year, so I can keep going.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, my one of my all-time favorite guitar players is Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats, of course. And yeah, they're on their 40th anniversary tour, and they're actually coming to Utah. And unfortunately, I didn't act soon enough to get tickets for it. But Brian Setzer is also a big reason why I love Gretsch guitars. I'm like a huge Gretsch aficionado, and of course Martin Gore of Depeche Mode. That's kind of his guitar of choice as well. So yeah, I gotta admit I'm a big rockabilly fan, always have been.
Absolutely. Do you have a Gretsch?
I do. I have a,
Oh,
beautiful.
nice.
It's a white Gretsch Electromatic, kind of like the cheap version of the White Falcon, but the tone that it puts out. I mean, you always hear people talking about that great Gretsch sound, that great Gretsch tone of the those hollow bodies and semi hollow bodies. Just they put out a tone and a sustain that is just throw a little bit of reverb and chorus on it. Oh, there's nothing like it. I just love it.
I I've always wanted one, and it's always a discussion of mine and Donna's. We're always talking about how I should get one, but for
Hmm.
some reason I never have. But I'm not like a primary guitar player.
Hmm.
I play guitar to write music, but that's about it. So, but someday
Yeah.
I think it'll happen.
That's kind of how I am. I think I can play two or three guitar licks. I can play the main riff from Personal Jesus. I can play the main riff from Duran Duran's Ordinary World, and just some other basic, simple blues progressions. But I am so not a guitar player. I mean, look at these tiny hands. I got like these super tiny hands that are just not cut out for playing guitar. But
Yeah,
I still love it. I mean, I still love guitar. Wish I was a guitar player, but yeah, when I write songs, it's usually I usually go to the piano. I've got a nice piano here in my home, and that's kind of like the organic process that I follow when I compose music. Which I realize for a lot of people that are synth pop fans, you would think, oh, he's going to start writing just with a synthesizer, and I almost always start composing a track with a piano, or I've got one of my bandmates that'll run through some chord progressions on an acoustic guitar. And it's
right.
interesting because almost all of my quote unquote synth pop heroes, like Vince Clarke, for instance, um, all the songs that Erasure that Vince Clarke writes, he writes on an acoustic guitar. And then once he gets the outline of the song, that's when he brings in all the synthesizers and the drum machines and the technology. Um, and I think a reason for that, and tell me if you agree with this, being a songwriter yourself, but I like having that aspect where if I strip away all the technology, I can still perform that song acoustically in an organic manner where there's still a song underneath all that technology, if that makes any sense.
I could not agree with you more. Absolutely, 100%. I've always said the best songs that I feel that I've written were the songs that were when I picked up an acoustic guitar and wrote them on an acoustic guitar. Those are the ones that seem to be I, and I think it's just like as you're describing. If it's something you can just play very simply, then it passed a certain muster test.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree.
Yeah, and I mean you mentioned the Fairlight a short while ago. I'm a huge fan of the Fairlight. And you know, obviously Depeche Mode with their synclaviers and their emulators been and Depeche Mode are a great example of that because I know that Martin Gore is another one that when he writes a song, he starts out usually with, you know, either an acoustic guitar or a piano, and then he fills in everything else with the technology. And you know, I just think that all the really great songs that are out there, whether they're synth pop or not, if if you can strip away all of that studio magic and all of that technology, all the DAW stuff, and if there's still a song underneath all that, that's when you've got something really special. And I can tell your music clearly has a lot of those elements in it, and probably one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to the music that you make and that you produce. And speaking of producers, you have this great relationship with the is it Nick James? Is that his name?
Yeah, Nick James. It's been since
Um,
about 2007. We've been
yeah,
working together.
just
Yeah.
I gotta tip my hat off to Nick. I've never met him. I don't know who he is, but I can tell you from the work that I hear that he's done with you has been absolutely extraordinary. What's it like working
It-
with a producer like
Nick
Nick?
Nick has been everything for me. Nick and Donna. I mean, that's like the nucleus of Christopher Anton. It's me, Nick, and Donna. And of course, we always have, there's other people who play, like Bry will play with us live, Bry Kaiser from Provision. And he's like a brother to me. I love him. We always talk about doing something that we never have for whatever reason. But Nick is, I mean, I just would not be able to do anything without him. He is uh, a true composer, pianist. He just has an understanding of this music like nobody else I've ever known. And I feel like the longer we stick together, the better things get, and we kind of just intuitively know where we're going with something.
Right.
And I just feel like even kind of more recently with the material we've been doing, even over the past few years here,
Mhm.
uh, it the connection has gotten stronger. It seems like we're doing things faster and better. So
Well,
yeah,
that's
he's a great
awesome.
guy.
And I also got to give a shout out to Bry Kaiser and the guy and Bry and Ian from Provision because they're also two of my favorite people. And I feel bad because you know Bry's not on Facebook anymore, and I had to deactivate all of my Instagram because I was just getting inundated with all these you know porn requests and things like that with Instagram. Kind of like what killed MySpace way back in the day was just all these fake accounts and stuff like
Right.
that. So, Bry, if you're watching this, I got to give a big shout out to you and to Ian. And yeah, it's I that's one of the reasons why I would love to see you performing is so that I know there's times when Bry has done shows with you, and that would be great just to see not only you perform, but to see somebody like Bry up on stage with you, and of course Donna Jean. And we got to give a shout out to Donna Jean, who my understanding is she's feeling a little under the weather, but May and I would like to send our absolute best to Donna Jean, who we love dearly. She's just an awesome person. Love her to death.
Donna is the best, and she's been an integral part of everything I've done since I met her, basically in 2008, and we got married in 2008. And she's just been, she's got done everything. She's almost always does backing vocals. She sings lead, like she did Feathers, the song I wrote,
Right.
and she sang the lead on that. So, and she's just super integral to everything that I do musically.
Well, like the old saying goes, behind every great man is a great woman, and you know, I've never had the pleasure of meeting either you or Donna Jean in person, but I know what a wonderful soul Donna Jean is, and you as well, and it's such a pleasure to see you guys working creatively together, and what a great 1-2 punch you guys have as a creative combo there with
Well,
Donna
we're gonna
Jean.
have to make that happen. I have family in Utah. I know so many people in Utah. Nick is in Utah. So
Really? Oh
yeah,
wow,
yeah,
great. That's
Salt Lake
awesome.
area. Yeah.
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm just a little ways north of Salt Lake, about just about 7 or 8 minutes outside of Salt Lake. And I'll tell you, if you ever come to Utah, I'd be willing to bring Eminent Soul out of retirement to open for you if you wanted.
Oh, well, we're gonna have to do it because we keep trying to plan a trip to Utah just to get together with everybody we know there. So It's
Yeah.
just going to have to happen.
Well, and what would be great is if I mean, heck, even getting like May, you're going to see all these anything box shows, and I've been trying to get Claude to come back to Utah, and the last show I think that Claude did in Utah as anything box was a show that I promoted with him. That was like going on 25, almost 25 years ago. So, gosh, I would love to see you and Donna Jean perform here, and maybe get Claude out here, and then who knows, either my current cover band or my Eminent Soul. We'd come out of retirement just for that. That would be
Well, we're
awesome.
going to have to make it happen one way or another. We'll have to,
Sounds
Definitely.
like a
to make
plan.
it.
I think we're still trying to plan that Utah Central, since we've decided that that's more central to get Stefano down there, and we've said McD can hightail himself up there, and I think
Yeah.
it sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Gotta make it happen. So tell us real quickly, how did you get started in music? What was it that really kind of started you out? And let's kind of talk more from a fan perspective. What were the artists or the albums or the songs, whether they're synth pop or otherwise, that really kind of made you decide, music is something that I need to have in my life? What was it that really kind of set you on the path of, being where you are today?
So my parents were not very musical people.
Hmm.
So I don't know where this came from, but my sister and I have a sister that's 2 years older than I am. So my parents were not really listening to much music. We didn't get anything by way of them. So we kind of just discovered whatever we could on pop radio.
Hmm.
So we were really, really influenced just by like top 40, really, when we were very young, growing up. And I had tried to play a couple of instruments when I was young, and it just never stuck. But then something happened when I was about 15 years old, 14, 15, and I heard Duran Duran. And what stood out to me was the bass lines. And then I really got into that music, and I wanted to be John Taylor. I wanted to be able to
Right?
play that type of bass. So it finally clicked for me, and I started playing bass. And that's what really, really moved me when I was about 14, 15. And then from there, I think it just kind of naturally segued into starting to listen to Depeche Mode, Alphaville, and all those up and coming bands at that time. It was really in California at that time. We had a station K Rock, which
Right.
was bringing in all this new alternative music, post punk bands, and it was kind of just we were right at the right age to be receptive to that whole movement, and it just really, me and my friends, we just really took to it, and it just impacted us. I think it was so different from what had been going on before that in the 70s and even into the early 80s. Um, there was a whole new level of, first of all, there were synthesizers, which were creating sounds that you could never have imagined existing prior to that. It was sort of the beginning of all of that technology. And you had artists writing in ways that seemed to be so personal. Bands like Depeche Mode and The Cure were writing things that at a young age you would just felt like they were writing this stuff for you. The
Right.
lyrical content of it.
Hmm.
So that's what really got me going, got me inspired, and then I was just all in. I'm very like when I'm into something, I'm all in, and I just don't let it go. And so it just kind of opened up this rabbit hole that I dove into, and then I wanted to start making this stuff. So the real impact on me that helped me decide that I wanted to do electronic music, when I heard the bass line to "Everything Counts" by Depeche Mode, I was like, "What is this?" I was mesmerized by it, and
Right.
also the "How to Be a Millionaire" by ABC. Something about the way those fairlights. I had a record player. I didn't have a very good system. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so everything was kind of just thrown
Yeah.
together. Had this record player, and I put those songs on, and I was just taken away by them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned Duran Duran because I was a huge Duran Duran fan. I want to say back about 82 or 83, right around the time that Rio came out, and they were just, everywhere on MTV. But the one thing that I always go back to with Duran Duran is John Taylor and those bass lines. I mean, if you've ever had an opportunity to listen to the isolated bass tracks of John Taylor playing on songs like Rio or Hunger Like the Wolf, I mean, he's doing these crazy syncopations, and he was influenced rather heavily by a lot of the R&B and funk, like bands like
Yeah.
Chic and whatnot. Nile Rodgers and Bernie Edwards, and I mean, gosh, the guy is such an underrated bass player. You always hear these whenever people talk about who the greatest bass players are in rock and roll. I think John Taylor needs to be brought up more often because he is truly. I mean, you don't really think about it because in a lot of people where I grew up in upstate New York, it was all about bands like Motley Crue, AC/DC, Def Leppard, all the hair metal bands. And so being a guy admitting that you like Duran Duran didn't go over so well in my high school.
Yeah,
And
I was in the same boat. I remember those days.
so it was kind of like, because all that anybody focused on was, oh, Duran Duran are a bunch of pretty boys and they're not real musicians. So, but it's funny because if you really examine Duran Duran's music, they wrote their own songs, they played all the instruments, and they are really each and every one of them uh, they're all truly gifted world class musicians in their own right. Um,
Yeah.
and of course, now that all of them are back together, and of course, this most recent album that they released back, I think last autumn, where they even had both Andy Taylor and Warren Cucurullo contribute to songs, was just amazing. And there's just something that's, for me anyways, kind of magical about whenever you get an original lineup of a band back together like Duran Duran, and it's just that magic does come back, and in some instances you can kind of recapture that lightning in a bottle, um, like I think Duran Duran have done a number of times, and certainly a band like OMD and Tears for Fears. Both bands were gone for a number of years, not doing much of anything, and then OMD get back together in like 2007, 2008, and they've now released like four albums that are just some of the best work they've ever done in their career. And then you've got Tears for Fears, who have been kind of sporadic. They broke up, Kurt Smith left Tears for Fears, kind of an acrimonious split, and then they got back together. And then this album that they released a short while ago, The Tipping Point, was like one of the most fabulous comeback albums that I've ever heard. So it's for me, it's great to know that a lot of those bands, and just speaking of a couple of them, Duran Duran, OMD, Tears for Fears, that we listened to back in the days when we were teenagers, and not only are they still around, but they are still making music, they're still writing new music, and that new music in a lot of instances holds up just as good as their classic hits. And in the case of OMD, now of course I'm biased being friends with Paul Humphreys of OMD, but I think it's some of the best work that OMD have ever done that they've been releasing lately. So it's always nice for me to know that the music that we listen to is not only still alive, but it's more popular, I think, than ever. And the younger generation, through a lot of things like like Stranger Things, the series on Netflix, and Cobra Kai, kind of reinvigorating the Karate Kid franchise, and as all of that happening, it's kind of made 80s culture and 80s music kind of like cool again. I mean, I've got one kid that's still in high school. He's going to be starting his senior year, and you know his classmates they want to listen to 80s music. They want to listen to Duran Duran and Van Halen and Depeche Mode and all these other bands, and it's cool to see that. I mean,
It
because
is.
I mean I don't know what it was like for you, May, or you, Christopher, but when I was growing up, one of the criticisms I got was, "Oh, this music is a fad. Nobody's going to even remember who Depeche Mode is in 20 years from now." And it's like, here they are now, they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as is Duran Duran. So it's kind of like, in some ways, a bit of a vindication, I think. It's
And
kind
The
of nice.
Cure.
And The
I mean, who would
Cure,
have thought
right?
The Cure would end up
Right.
there? But
Yeah. The Cure and the
yeah,
Cars. Got to get Devo in there. They're not there yet, but close.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's music now is so much more accessible than it was. I mean, obviously, than it was when we were kids. Like nobody our age when we were in high school was really listening to like 60s music. I mean, there were, but it wasn't
Right.
overt. It was always a very contemporary, keep your hand on the pulse of what's happening right now. But I think because, and as you described, there is this nostalgia for that time. I think there was a time when that type of music was great, and that just happened to be it. And I think, when is there going to be another point in time when you have something that's so momentous as the synthesizer, where you have something creating sounds that did not exist
Right.
prior to that?
Yeah.
So it was just,
And then you bring sampling into it. I mean, look at what Depeche Mode did with sampling, with all the found sounds that they had. That they go into a construction site and just sample metal on metal, and lo and behold, that ends up making its way into Everything
right,
Counts and People Are
right,
People. And so like you were saying, it's that technology and the advent of the synthesizer and sampling technology, just it changed the face of music back in the 1980s, when it really became part of the you know the whole zeitgeist, if you will, of that arrival of the synthesizer and new wave and synth pop and all that stuff, post punk. I mean, it was just such an exciting time to be alive, and to be a part of that, and to have all that great music. And the fact that it's more appreciated now than it was back then is just it's one of those things that really warms my heart. So
yeah. And speaking of Duran Duran is one of the bands that has always been super consistent album to album. And I know they were down to, I think, Simon and Nick at one point, weren't they?
right.
But still, everything they've done has sounded like Duran Duran. It's been,
Right.
and it's been at least good. They've never churned out something that was mediocre. Um, and Depeche Mode, I feel like, the past few albums, and I'm one of those that's like, that really believes that Alan made all the difference.
Yeah.
I will stick to those guns forever, and those were the great albums that Depeche Mode put out.
Yeah.
So the last few have not been what they could be, but there's been some.
There's with regards to Depeche Mode, I think there's been moments and glimpses of the old glory of Depeche Mode, and every one of the last 4 or 5 albums, there's been at least one or two songs that you're like, okay, yeah, that's the Depeche Mode that I know and love. But by and large, yeah, I just I don't know. There's just something there that wasn't there before, and I think Alan is a very big component of that. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I like some of the stuff that Depeche Mode have done in the last couple of years, but it's not for me. An album like Memento Mori does not even begin to stack up against an album like Black Celebration
Right.
or
No, it's
Music for
it's
the
a different
Masses, or
thing.
even or Violator. I mean, I think they really, for me, they hit their pinnacle with Violator. I'm one of those people that's not a huge fan of Songs of Faith and Devotion, because for me, that was kind of where they began their progression towards more of a blues rock oriented kind of type
That one
sound.
took a while for me. I didn't really fully understand it when it came out, but looking at it now, I think it's brilliant. But at the
Yeah,
time, I didn't really get it.
yeah, yeah. Black Celebration is still that's my not just my favorite Depeche Mode album. That's my favorite album across all genres and all time. I just Black Celebration still hits me right there.
Yeah, me too. I'm right there with you. I get it.
Right
Yeah.
on. So tell us about where you're, getting into, joining a band. What was your first performance and getting involved with a band? Tell us a little bit about how you got started performing.
So what I did was when I wanted to be like John Taylor, I started playing bass. And I think it was for my birthday. My mom, we went to the mall because we didn't know where to go to the music store in the mall, picked out a bass. I had no idea what I was choosing. It's
Right.
just like, oh, that looks cool. And it was some old band. And I started playing it and I took lessons. And looking back, I was really fortunate to have had a bass player, a bass teacher who wanted to show me all this Johnny Cash riff stuff. At the time, I was like,
Nice.
I don't, at the time, I wasn't really keen to Johnny Cash. I didn't really know why I would need to learn this stuff, but that's what he was teaching me because he was an old school guy, and that's what he was showing me. So I still remember a lot of that, those scales and that stuff. Um, but as I progressed in my bass playing, I really wanted to do it so badly, and I had joined. Um, there was a local music store. This was in Altaloma, California, and Altaloma Music, and they had, at the time, we called it a workshop. It was a school of rock, but we didn't use that term back then. I don't think I had heard that term until that Jack Black movie. But it was basically a school of rock, and they bring all the kids together that wanted to play to be in a band, and they teach us, contemporary songs or whatever we wanted to play, and we play them. So that's what gave me experience playing in a band. And from there, when I met some people through that process, I said, hey, let's start an original band. I have these ideas. Let's go do them and record them. So this was probably like, my senior year in high school, 17 years old. And then I started a band. It was called Blue Accent, and I wanted it to be Synth-Pop. So I didn't have much money, but whenever I did, I would buy a piece of gear. So I started off with a drum machine and programming on a drum machine. I had a Casio keyboard, but I had a keyboard player and a guitar player. And so that was my first experience. And Blue Accent played at a club called the Green Door in Montclair, California. That was our first gig. And I remember being so frightening. So I'm like 18 years old at the time. And we had written all these songs. We went to a local studio, and recorded some demos. And we had this opportunity to go play live, and we did it. And I would play bass and sing back then. And I just remember, and this always stuck with me. We did a sound check, and the sound guy said, "Well, can you sing louder?" And they had zero experience with all this. Like, I was just winging it. And that always stuck with me. And from that point on, I really got it into my soul and into my psyche. Okay, from now on, I'm going to belt it out wherever I go. And it kind of created a precedent for me where from there on, I started really, I guess it was a bit of an insecurity of mine, like, oh, I'm not singing loud enough. So I started just really doing everything I could to push the envelope with that. But from there, that band stayed together a couple years, and then I started a band called Pseudo Cypher in the 90s, and it was all original as well. And it wasn't until like the 2000s that I joined a Depeche Mode tribute. And that gave me a lot more stage experience and kind of got me out of my shell a little bit more, kind of raised the bar. From that, I went to Information Society. So,
Well, great segue. Let's talk about how that connection with Information Society came about.
that was so in about 2005. This, you mentioned MySpace, and I was on MySpace, and I was still doing. It was kind of the end of Pseudo Cypher, and I had been doing a Depeche Mode tribute, singing for Depeche Mode tribute for a couple of years at that point. And I was still trying to record my original music. But for whatever reason, I had started thinking about the song What's on Your Mind and how I wanted to cover it. So I covered it. And remember, on MySpace, you could upload your music.
Right.
And I uploaded it there. And that's what got me. It just happened to coincide with Paul Robb looking to reform Information Society. And somehow he caught wind of that and saw that I had done that and sent me an email. And he said, hey, I'm thinking of putting Information Society back together, or, would you be interested in talking to me? And of course I said yes. First I thought the email was a joke.
Right.
Yeah. I thought the email was like, hey, what is this? Somebody's like pulling my leg, or what's going on here? But it ended up being the real thing. And we hit it off pretty quickly.
That's awesome. They're one of the few American synth acts that I've not only have I never seen them perform live before, but I've never had an opportunity to meet Paul or Jim or Kurt. But I've been an Information Society fan ever since I first saw the What's on Your Mind video back in 1988. Loved the debut album. I loved the follow-up album Think, and then Synthesizer was the album that you were actually featured on, was it not? The
Right.
and that for me still holds up as being one of the best Information Society releases that they've done to date. So, uh, man, what a privilege and what a thrill that must have been for you to be working with Paul Robb and Jim Cassidy.
It was amazing. And when I joined the band, um, Kurt was completely out of the picture, and it was a situation where they had said, "Chris, it's you or nobody." We were really, we did promo, we went out, and we did freestyle events, we went to Brazil and performed. It was really supposed to just be us from that moment forward. But I happened to be going through a divorce at the time, and that could have put a wrench in the whole thing. And so it just didn't last. It didn't last a couple of years, and that was the end of it. But we worked on Synthesizer from January to December of 2006, and then it was finally released in I don't remember the exact month, but somewhere early
Yeah,
2007.
I want to say spring of 2007. Yeah.
Yeah, prior to that, we released Oscillated, which was
Mm,
kind of the precursor to that, which was an EP.
yeah.
Um, and then, of course, there was a remix album, Modulator.
Hmm.
But all those were sort of our Information Society. We had an arrangement at the time where we could go by InfoSoc, we could go by Information Society, but Kurt kept InSoc.
INSOC, right.
Yeah, because that was kind of I guess that was his idea to start using that
Right.
terminology.
Hmm.
I guess it was reminiscent of 1984.
Right.
Um, yeah. So
Or
so
Willie
that
reference.
yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Like I said, I've been a huge Information Society fan ever since 1988. So when I found out that you were the lead singer of Information Society for the Synthesizer album, I was even more excited because I'd already discovered your solo work before I knew that was you singing on the Synthesizer album.
Oh
So,
wow, yeah.
and it was cool because I actually had a lot of friends here in Utah that were into synth pop that were telling me about this new, hey, Information Society's back and they've got a new lead singer, but it's still Paul Robb and Jim Cassidy. And oh man, you got to hear this new singer. He sounds so amazing. And so naturally, I was, my curiosity was piqued. So I went out and I downloaded it off iTunes, and I was like, oh my gosh, where has this been all my life? So instantly became a fan, and then when I found out that was you, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing because I
Yeah,
didn't I didn't I didn't do the connection until much later,
interesting. Yeah,
because I discovered. I mean, obviously I listened to Synthesizer first because that was 2007, but I already become a fan of your solo work that you were doing. And then when I don't remember if it was Ron Hubbard or somebody else was like, yeah, did you know that Chris was the lead singer of Information Society at one time? I'm like, really? And at first I was like, what was he there in the early days when they were still there in Minneapolis? And Ron was like, no, have you listened to their Synthesizer album? I'm like, no, that's Chris. Oh my gosh. So it was like, one of those, oh my
that's
gosh,
funny.
I'm so embarrassed I didn't know that, but still, you know, um, yeah, that album, folks, if you haven't heard the Synthesizer album by Information Society, go stop what you're doing right now and check that out. It's such a good album. And man, that just must have been awesome working with Paul Robb because he's like a technological genius. I think when it comes to synth programming and samples. I mean, holy cow. I mean, just yeah. I
We had
mean,
a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. We clicked right away. And yeah, the guy, I mean, he created a sound, like a
yeah,
very unique proprietary sound for that band. You hear
yeah,
that and you hear something like Running or What's on Your Mind, and that's Information Society. I mean,
right. Yeah.
there's a production value that's just amazing with him.
Yeah, I mean, he also speaking of Paul Robb, he actually produced one of my other favorite albums of the late 1980s, which was Red Flag's debut album, Naive Art.
He did.
Another, another album that I absolutely love. And let me tell you how big of a fanboy I am of Paul Robb. I even own some of his Think Tank releases
Oh
that
yeah.
he did. And so I'm yeah, I'm a big fan of what Paul Robb has done. So man, so cool.
Yeah, and
Love
when you listen to Red Flag or listen to Noel, like Silent Morning,
it.
you
Hmm.
hear you can hear his signature sound in all of that stuff.
Hmm.
All the production in that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little about let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about your songwriting, your creative process. Now we talked a little earlier at the beginning of the importance of making sure that there's actually a song underneath all that technology. But what kind of let's say headspace or what kind of a frame of mind do you have to get in when you sit down to write songs? Is it something that you have to chase after, or is it something that just comes to you?
Both. It depends on what's going on in my life.
Mhm.
Like I had said earlier, I feel like the times when I've written something that's really special, at least special to me,
Mhm.
uh, it's just it's just there. And I'm sure you can appreciate this as a songwriter. Um, when you wonder about where these ideas come from, sometimes they're just there. And I think that's when the magic happens and that's when it's really working. Sometimes I'll just pick up a guitar and I'm, for whatever reason, inspired. And it seems to be the best way to do it. But if you're not getting that, then you have to rely on something, right? If you're really wanting to produce something. And so I do it both ways. I'll do it a variety of ways. And now with technology is being what it is, I usually use a program called Reason is my go-to.
That's what I use.
Oh, really? Okay,
Oh
there's not
man,
a
that's
lot of
awesome.
us out there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, Nick uses primarily,
Hmm.
and so did Paul when we were doing synthesizer. That was
Uh-huh.
Cubase. Uh, but I just stuck with Reason because it was something that I started with really early, like 2004, I think it was when I
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
And I noticed a few years ago they started coming out with more and more rack extensions
Right.
like that were super retro, like
Hmm.
808 clones and Lindrum clones, and that was really inspiring for me. And there
Yeah.
was sort of so I got kind of some wind in my sails with that, with all of that going on, because I was like, wow. And some synth wave plugins and things like that got me
Hmm.
inspired.
Yeah, reason is it's interesting because the what drew me to that was the mixing console that is used in Reason is modeled after an SSL 9000 series mixer, I believe. And when I was going through audio engineering programs, that was the mixing console that I had access to was an old SSL 9000 series mixing console. So it was like second nature to me. Like, oh, okay, here's where I can EQ the mids and the lows and the highs, and then okay, master bus compression, and just like everything was just so familiar to me just from the mixer standpoint. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about Reason is the mixing console. It's just natural, a natural flow to me. But I also like the fact that Reason, particularly when it started out, was really kind of laid out for musicians and for songwriters more so than audio engineers, because obviously when I was coming up and learning everything in my university classes, everything was based on Pro Tools, which was the industry standard. And
Right.
I hate Pro Tools with a vengeance. I've had so many sessions crash on me with Pro Tools, and I think I can count on probably one hand the number of times over the last 15 years that Reason has actually seized up and crashed on me during a session. Um,
Reason does not crash. It
it,
really doesn't. It's very, very, very solid in that area. And I've
yeah,
never been a Pro Tools guy. I've recorded in Pro Tools, but I was not doing the hands-on work with it.
yeah,
But Yeah.
Yeah, Pro Tools, not a fan of that, but Cubase is another one that I like. And of course, once I finally dove into working with Macs, I got into Logic Pro. Um, Still don't really know my way around Logic as well as I would like to, but anytime I compose, anytime I do a remix, it's always Reason is what I use, and especially now that you can use VST and VST3 compatible. I can use my Roland Cloud. I'm a huge Roland fanboy, as
Oh
everybody
yeah, I love
knows.
Roland.
And
Yeah.
so like literally every synthesizer, hardware synthesizer that I own is a Roland. But I've got all the Roland Cloud. I've got the Korg Legacy collection. I've got Omnisphere. Uh, some of my favorite rack extensions. I've got the Propeller Heads PX7, which is like their DX7. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I love what is it, Parsec, and I love Rob Poppin's Predator and Antidote. I mean, just yeah,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
talk Reason with you all day, man.
Yeah, I love that program. And I didn't know any different. I just started using it and I didn't
Mhm.
know it's the DAW that I use.
Right.
So and I'm glad that I did because it does emulate like a live setting, like you were saying, and
Yeah.
you can toggle back and forth behind the rack.
Yep.
So if you really want to be a nerd and like rewire everything, you can, which I've done some tutorials with that, which are pretty interesting. Nowadays, I kind of just I don't really get into all that. I just kind of use it as a writing tool
Hmm.
because Nick ends up taking it anyway because he does such a better job.
Right.
I feel like I can produce to an extent, but I'm not a natural at it like some people are.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always considered myself more of a performer and old school player as opposed to. But at the same time, I love spending time in the studio. I'm one of those guys that will spend an hour or two just making sure I get the the frequency on the hi-hat just right, and to make sure I get the the delay right on the hand claps.
Yeah.
Little things like that. So
What
I love studio time, but my real passion is songwriting and performing. Performing is my absolute favorite.
Yeah, mine too. Mine too. I've always had this attitude that you should do whatever you have to do to make a recording sound as good as you can do it. I mean, I'm not like a synth purist or anything like that. I've always thought I need to do whatever I have to do to make that aspect of it sound great.
Right.
And then, but live performance is always been something I wanted to do.
Hmm.
So that's always been a factor in everything that I put my stamp on
Yeah.
to be able to do it live.
Oh, no question. It's funny you mentioned synthwave with Reason, because one of the people that I connected with very early on when I went headfirst into Reason was Michael Oakley. And I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Oakley, but
Oh yeah.
he's a big synthwave guy. In fact, he's done a lot of sound design for Reason and for a lot of other really well-known VSTs out there. And on top of that, he's just one of my favorite people. He's like you. He's just an awesome guy. And so he and I connected in the old Reason forums back when Propeller Heads, the old propellerheads.com and the old Reason forum before they shut that down. And
Right.
but he was, a lot of the networks that I have, May, Raymond and Carl from Pacific Deep, I met them through the old Reason forum and website. So a lot of the musicians that I've connected with, and this is funny, the very first person that sold me on Reason going back to 2004 was Paul Humphreys of OMD.
Oh really?
And he uses Pro Tools, but at the time, I was working with Paul on this project called 1-2, which was a side project that he was doing before he rejoined OMD. And it was a project that he did with Claudia Brucken of the German band Propaganda, and Martin Gore of Depeche Mode actually co-wrote a song with Paul and Claudia, and even played guitar on one of their singles. And when Paul was producing that album, that EP, he was just discovering Reason. He's like, this Reason 4 is the most, he's like, you got to check it out, Jim. And at the time I was almost entirely hardware clear up until about 2010. I'm ashamed to say
Yeah.
it, but at the same time, I mean, I just hardware is what I learned on. I learned, how to sequence either on a workstation, a keyboard workstation, or on the old Alesis MMT8, sequencers and whatnot. So
That's what I used back in
until
the late
yeah,
80s.
yeah,
Yeah.
until I made the jump into software full time, I was using nothing but hardware. But Paul Humphreys is the one that suggested that I check out Reason, and I'm not so sure if he's using it much anymore. But that was like, oh well, one of my heroes is using Reason. I gotta check this out, and I'm so glad that I did, because I've been when I made the full jump into DAW and software based recording, Reason was what I ran with. Because if you remember back in the early days of Reason, you could not record audio. It was all
Right. There
strictly
was a separate program called Record.
record,
It
which
was,
I had.
yeah, I don't think I ever had that. I just used, until they merged them, I just used it as a sequencer
Yeah,
to sequence songs together.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's so cool that you use Reason. May, I'm so sorry. I'm sure we're probably more
Yeah, we're nerding
that
out.
kind
It's
of, yeah, we're geeking out about our technology and our gear.
That
yeah.
is quite all right. I've got Kevin was back here letting dogs in and out and, getting pastries out of the refrigerator with all, nothing is as loud as the sound of somebody crackling cellophane in a quiet room. And
I don't know
for a
if you heard it
dog,
here, but
hmm,
our dogs came running in and out of here barking a minute ago. I don't think
I
it picked up.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
did it. See
Yeah,
that's the benefit of your, the one
of
mic you
this
have
thing.
unpacked, right?
Right.
No, mine, I hear my kid cough upstairs in the loft and I see my little gain light, flicker and I'm like, shut up, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm in a room with a very high vaulted ceiling and tile floors, so just
same.
everything just reverberates in here. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I've been enjoying listening to this because it's stuff that's, completely the technical side is something I learn. I listen to what people talk about and I pick it up. And of course I had, the big smiles on my face when Jim was saying he's never seen Information Society live because I'm seeing them next month.
Oh, wow.
No.
And you know why?
Oh,
I hate to say the big draw is because Claude's opening for them.
well, there you go.
So,
Yeah.
that's yeah, definitely gonna be.
Is that at Numbers?
Actually, it's at Sam's Burger Joint on
Oh,
Friday, and then it Numbers on Saturday.
okay.
So it's like July 19th and 20th. So yeah.
So that's a great topic to kind of segue into, is Numbers, this amazing nightclub that's it's in Houston, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And Christopher, you did there was this great compilation that came out a couple years ago, to benefit the nightclub, and you actually contributed a track or two to that compilation, didn't you?
Yeah, Nick and I did a couple of things for that.
Russian Radio, I
We
think, was one, right?
we did Russian radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, we contributed. We'd already recorded Fade to Gray, but that was a part of it also. Um, Nick worked with Donna on looking from a hilltop. There was
Mm,
another song. Was that it? I think that was it. Those three. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's a
So
great compilation, man.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. I always wanted to cover Red Flag. I love doing covers, but that was a lot of fun. I think it was, I don't know if Nick was too happy about it, but
Now,
we had a version of Russian radio that was so different from the original.
mhm,
And I thought it was great. But Robert, who's kind of like putting this together for Numbers, he wanted things to sound more retro, more original, like the
mhm,
original version. So we went with a more authentic, as far as original type, um, harkening back to the original song,
right.
kind of a thing. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, and of course, May, you being located in Texas, uh, I don't know if there's any place outside of Southern California that has a stronger fan base of synth pop. And just look at all the amazing synth pop artists that are based there in Texas. And now, obviously, Christopher, you and Donna Jean recently moved from Texas, but at one time you had, Christopher Anton, you had Provision, Channel 69, if I'm not mistaken, T for Two are based out of there, and then Vic 20, right? Good old Greg Hobgood. So, what is it with Texas and synth pop? Explain this to me, because Utah, I mean, Utah is also another kind of a bastion for synth pop. But sadly enough, I don't think there's even. I think we have Rare Facture that are still left, but like Eminent Soul, they haven't done anything. So for the first time in a long time, I don't think Utah has any homegrown synth pop that I'm aware of. So explain this fascination that Texas, of all places, has with synth pop.
Yeah, I think it actually comes down to a lot of it being the Hispanic population. So I've said before that, like, I spent my first 3 years of high school, I grew up here, but first 3 years of high school, I was on the East Coast in Florida, and came back to San Antonio for my senior year of high school. And all of a sudden, that was the year Depeche Mode Violator had come out, Anything Box Peace. All of a sudden, the music scene was different than what it was when I had left. When I left, there was the beginning of the new wave movement, and those little cliques were very small. But I think somewhere there's an article somewhere about and literally the title is almost something like "Why Do Mexicans Love Morrissey So Much?" And it's
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting because when you look at my grandparents are from Mexico, so I'm second generation Mexican American, and you see this pull away with this generation, in the 80s. Again, the 80s music was so different, was so new. The synthesizers were making noises you never heard before. And there were pretty much, three types of music in San Antonio. You have country, you have rock, and then you have the Tejano conjunto sounds that a
Mhm.
lot of these kids grew up with their parents, what they're listening to. And the new wave synth pop pulled away so much from the standards, the old standards. And so when I go to a lot of shows, I look at the crowds. The first Anything Box show after the pandemic, oh gosh, it was so huge and so crowded. And it was the audience was probably about no good 85% Hispanic. And it's just something that I've just noticed. It's really interesting. And then you go to Austin and you see a smaller Hispanic population, a little bit more Anglo. Um, and even those, you'd think that Austin being like, the live music capital of the, world here, it
Mhm.
is, you'd see more of that kind of music, which I think is interesting because a lot of bigger acts, they come to Austin, they don't come to San Antonio, but I think they would
Right.
get the support they're looking for in San Antonio.
Mhm.
And then Dallas and Houston, that's Dallas, you're going even further north. Houston, you're getting closer to Louisiana. And I just think it's one of those things that I really want to look into more because I'm fascinated by the way people are drawn towards different types of music based on their background, ethnicity, their parents, grandparents. I mean, because I was raised on the Beatles and bossa nova and
Mhm.
jazz, Antonio Carlos Jobim and Stan Getz and Sergio Mendes, and which was not typical of most Hispanic people in San Antonio. My parents were just different. So I mean, go
Right.
figure. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to see. I did I did get to see Channel 69 and T for Two my birthday weekend. I don't know, it's been a blur. But yeah, I did send Jim a picture because I finally got to meet oh my gosh, why am I drawing
John,
a blank?
Britain or John.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I got to meet all of them and but yeah, it was really neat to finally meet these guys who I'd communicated with through on your show, through your chat. And it was really neat to meet. Um but yeah, I just noticed there's just that little because I've lived other places over the past 20 years. Lived in Ohio, lived in near Montgomery, Alabama, Biloxi, Mississippi, and I wasn't seeing the draw towards the new wave or the synth pop at all. I mean, I heard some pretty good music when I was up in Ohio because we had the local NPR station was out of Yellow Springs, out of Antioch University, and so I mean, there I heard some different stuff, but still not quite. It was mostly like indie pop, indie, a lot of indie stuff, but not the synth pop. Really, wasn't hearing a lot of that.
Yeah, it's like Texas is just like, you know, they get it as far as synth pop goes. And you probably know this, May, but synth pop has always been huge in the Mormon community. You know, synth
Mhm.
pop, all the artists, all the classic artists, whenever they go on tour, almost all of them, except for Anything Box, Claude. You know, we've got Howard Jones coming. We've got OMD coming this year. We had you know, Depeche Mode always make a stop here, and it's just we've always had a huge support for that kind of music. We still have multiple radio stations here in the Salt Lake area that will play all that classic synth pop on a regular basis. Where I grew up in New York, it just that was just completely foreign to me. You know, I was the odd kid out that was listening to Depeche Mode and Dead or Alive and Pet Shop Boys and all this stuff. And then it's like I move out west, and not only was it on the radio, but that's what people were listening to. I was running into fans, you know, people that were, "Oh, dude, you like Depeche Mode? I love Depeche Mode." And it's like, because usually I was used to getting, you know, teased and made fun of for, you know, for listening to that stuff. And so the fact that you know, I think Southern California has always been the biggest draw because you had K Rock, um, had such a presence there back in the day and still to this day. But you know, Arizona, when I lived in Arizona taking care of my mom and dad, that kind of music is huge down there. Synth pop is huge in Arizona. You got electric soul right there in the Phoenix area. So it's like synth pop is huge out here in the West, and I just think that's awesome. It's one of the reasons why I love living here in the West. I have yet to make it to Texas. In fact, the only time I've been in Texas has been when I've flown into either Houston or Dallas. I've never actually set foot outside of an airport in the state of Texas, and I gotta change that.
Yeah,
I gotta once there's one of these shows in Texas, I just gotta go. I gotta go there one of these days.
I agree. Absolutely. You got
Right
to get
on.
down here,
So May,
revisit.
let me ask you, what is one of your favorite Christopher Anton songs?
Oh, Danger, the club mix. Gosh, I love that song. That's
Ab
song is so
Absolutely.
fun. And I love the video that he and Donna did for that, that they're all dressed up and just just look so cute.
Uh, uh, there was a time where once a week I would think, maybe I need to pull this down because it was
It's
so
adorable.
ridiculous. But
I
now I look at it, I'm like, whatever.
I
Yeah, it
love
was.
cheese. I mean, that's the thing. I love cheese. I am a huge MST3K fan. So one of my friends is always, she loves a lot of the retro B movie, monster movies. And she's always posting like, oh, watching this today. And this came in. And I'm like, I've seen that, but because MST3K made fun of it. So I love cheese and I love having fun. I mean, that we
Mhm.
have so many serious things. We have so many pressures. We're adults and, you know,
Right.
Oh,
adulting sucks. And I think we need fun and ridiculousness.
uh, well, I appreciate you liking that song. Thank you. That's one of the rare instances where I produced Danger. Skylar
Wow.
White did the club remix. So that was a rare instance where Nick wasn't involved in that. And that was in the middle of COVID. And
Yeah.
that was exactly it. It's like, everybody wants to be so tragically cool. Let's just do something that's just not cool.
Well, you definitely hit the mark, and like May says, that club mix, Skylar just knocked that out of the park. To this day, it remains probably one of my top favorite synth pop songs of the last 10 years. I mean, that's you guys truly just nailed that one. Love
Wow,
everything
that's
about it.
huge, huge compliment. Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Yeah.
Um, we need to do that song live. We have not done it live yet.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And speaking of covers, let's talk about you guys did a cover of Depeche Mode's "Personal Jesus," and it was called the Autobahn remix, I think.
Right.
Hands down, the best "Personal Jesus" cover I've ever heard. I mean, I love
Wow.
Johnny Cash. I think his cover version was fantastic, but you guys just, you took Personal Jesus and just owned it, like nobody else I've ever heard before. So that's another one cover that you guys nailed. And the other one that I'm actually jealous that you did, I grew up, the very first album I ever bought was an album called Destroyer by Kiss, 1978. I was, and to this day, remain a Kiss fan. Okay. And for the longest time, I was trying to convince my bandmates, we should really do a cover of "I Was Made for Loving You," because it's just, it's just begging for a synth pop. It's got that disco flavor already for the original. And you go ahead and do it. And again, you just knocked that one out of the park, my friend. Love it.
That was another one. I'm a Kiss fan too. We finally got to see Donna and I went and saw Kiss live a couple years ago, and it was phenomenal. The stage
Yeah.
show is just unbelievable that they put
Oh
on.
yeah.
But yeah, that was another one that was like, yeah, we should try to do this. And when anytime I approach Nick with something, I never know if he's gonna be like, yeah, let's do it, or like, no, it's not a good idea. And I think with that one, we were both kind of like, yeah, maybe this will work because it is, like you said, it's a disco song. So
Yeah.
it seems pretty natural that it would work out. But um yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun doing. And Personal Jesus, that version, that's Ricardo Autobahn. He
Oh,
did a
okay.
remix of my song In Silence that kind of
Mhm.
became it was a remix version, but we kind of use it as the primary version that we do live, and it's the version that we made the video for. Um, and it's kind of the same thing with that. We actually have another version. It's more of a rock version of Personal Jesus, and
Mhm.
Ricardo Autobahn took those stems and created that remix.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the remix is the one we do live, the
Oh,
remix version.
that's fantastic. And "In
Yeah.
Silence," that's another one of your originals that I absolutely love. Just another brilliant, brilliant song. So let's talk about you've got a brand new single that just came out about a week or so ago called "Signals." Tell us about "Signals."
Yeah, so Nick and I have just been kind of going, we've kind of come to the conclusion that we're not really going to do an album per se. We're just going to do singles. And then on the back end, we'll put them together and probably release CDs. I've had two kind of versions of that we've called Genesis of Sound 1, Genesis of Sound 2, and we'll probably do that again at some
Okay.
point. But we've just been on this trek to do singles. So I wrote this song, and this was another rare occasion where I didn't write that on guitar. I just put some synth stuff together, and then I had this idea. I was like kind of meditating on ideas, and I thought, okay, I want to go back to what it was like when I first met Donna. And I remember when I first met Donna, and we were on the phone all the time. I mean, we were head over heels in love. I mean, it was just like a no-brainer.
Right.
And it was one of those situations where I'd have like butterflies in my stomach all the time. I couldn't stop thinking about her. And when I would call her, because she was in Texas, I was in California.
Hmm.
And there were times when I would call and I'd miss her and it would go through to voicemail. And it was just this like overwhelming, it was such an emotional time. I just wanted to write a song about that in some respect. Now, there's other themes within the song, but the song is primarily about me not being able to connect with Donna, and that's what gave me the inspiration to do this thing. And it just kind of like rolled out off of that. And it's a very and Nick and I kind of got into talking about it because it's a very pop song. You talk
Hmm.
about people being sticklers for certain genres of music. I knew that was a pop song. Maybe not even. I mean, it comes off as a synth pop song, but I think primarily it's just a pop song. So um, we finally kind of came into. We worked on a lot of different versions of it, and then finally settled on this one, and we released it. I think it's been out 2 weeks everywhere.
Hmm.
So it's our latest thing.
Right on. It's a great song, and I'm so excited to play it on my radio show coming up here in a couple of weeks. I know that my listeners are going to absolutely love it every bit as much as I do. And you had another single that preceded that called "Don't Cry Tonight." Kind of a more of a lower tempo, mid tempo kind of type track. Tell us just a little bit about how "Don't Cry Tonight" came together.
So Don't Cry Tonight is a cover, and it's a cover version of a song by it reads Savage, but it's Italo disco. He's from Italy, so I imagine
Right.
it's probably not pronounced like that, Savage or something like that.
Savage, yeah.
Um, but I heard this. I love Italo disco, but I had never heard that song until about a year ago.
Hmm.
And I was driving home from a gig with the cover band I was in, Mr. Wonderful,
Hmm.
and I was playing a mix of Italo disco, and this song came on, and again I was mesmerized by it, and just kind of like meditated with it, sat with it for a while, and then decided to try to record it. And it was one of those instances that I sent my demo to Nick, and he was like, "Oh, this is great. We got to do this."
Hmm.
And he put it together.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So we've mentioned Donna Jean a couple of times. Real quickly, how did you and Donna Jean meet, and how did that all come about?
So that was in about early 2008. And I was still living in California, and I was planning some shows,
Hmm.
and I was going to be going to San Antonio. And I started doing promotion on MySpace.
Hmm.
And somehow she caught wind of that. And we started chatting on MySpace because she lived in San Antonio at the time.
Hmm.
And it was just kind of an instantaneous thing. We just hit it off and started talking. And then it just escalated from there. So it was just a whirlwind romance from the start.
That's awesome. She's
Yeah.
she's just an absolute sweetheart of a lady, and I love the track that she did for that Anything Box tribute. She did a cover of the Anything Box tune, "All These Hours Undone." Just love her voice. Just love the spirit that she has, and so let's kind of shift a little bit now and talk about another personal thing here for you is your faith. You and Donna Jean are both very clearly defined by your faith and your spirituality. And so, if you don't mind, just kind of talk to us about your spiritual journey that you've been on, and to the extent that you feel comfortable, tell us about how you arrived at where you are today with your faith.
No, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of my life right now. And I'm a recovered alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. I started drinking alcoholically at 15 years old. And I did that until I was 26. And through that period of time, that disease progressed. It just got worse and worse. And I was an atheist. I actually didn't believe in God. I didn't have any kind of faith. I had grown up in the Episcopal Church, but that was not something that stuck with me. Um, but and my alcoholism got so bad, and I tried to quit drinking so many different times that it just got to a point where I had no hope, and I could not, for the life of me. And this is something that's very difficult to explain. For anybody that's not an addict, it's really hard to explain the process that somebody goes through when you're doing something, when you're controlled by an addiction, because it's like your mind is out to screw you over. No matter what you do, there's something within your psyche that's always working on destruction,
Right.
your destruction. And I could not get out of this cycle. So one day, out of desperation, and this was as an atheist, I decided to pray because I had tried everything and nothing had worked. And when I prayed, something changed because I didn't have the ability to say to myself, well, I'm going to put this bottle of Jack Daniels down. That was not in my. It just wasn't there for whatever reason. I didn't have that. Uh, it was just a concept that was just not going to happen.
Right.
So once I prayed, I heard this distinct voice that you need to put, because I was drinking Jack Daniels. was drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels, and I was at the point in that disease where I was drinking in the morning at 6 a.m. I was drunk, and it had really destroyed my life. Any hopes for any kind of musical career was just, everything was gone. Nobody wanted to be around me. Um, so in that moment, after praying, I was able to put that bottle down, and I went into a rehab and I got sober. I've been sober 28 years, and I consider myself a recovered alcoholic. Um, and it's a form of insanity when you're living that way.
Mhm.
But from there, it just naturally progressed. I started searching for truths and things, and I started reading the Bible, and it really just stood out to me that there was truth in Jesus and in the New Testament. So that's what really, it was a long journey, because that probably didn't happen till about 5 or 6 years into my sobriety.
Right.
But eventually I got to that point, and now I try to keep it very simple. Um, I know that there is an authority in the universe, and I know that it's God, and it's very much a part of everything I do. And my testimony is very important. I've even printed up testimony cards that I'll hand out at shows if anybody's interested,
Mhm.
because it was, if I hadn't had that experience with God, I don't know what would have happened. I had known people that drank the same way I did, a few years after I stopped drinking, and they progressed on, and they died. So it really serious situation. But basically, that's what it was. And it even, you know, Donna and I got very involved in church, in a non-denominational church. We even did praise and worship, and that's I even did a synth-pop praise and worship album called Connected, if you want to go look for that.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah. So the song Don't Let Me Go is on that album.
Mhm.
But I consider the whole album to be a praise album.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know we talked a little bit about it before we got started today, but I myself didn't I haven't struggled with alcohol addiction or what you went through, but I did have a father while I was growing up. My dad was an alcoholic, and the things that does to you from the standpoint of being the child of a parent who's an alcoholic, it's to this day, I'm still dealing with a lot of the PTSD, if you will, because my father, when he would drink, he never ever got physically abusive, but he got very verbally abusive. He would say things to me like, I wish you were never born. You're an embarrassment to me. Things that no child should ever hear their parent say to them. Um, and my father, to his credit, turned his life around, and he did it the same exact way that you did. There was one particular incident that happened back about 1988 when I just spent all these years keeping all my stress and anger and frustration inside. And then one night, my dad he started unloading on me and my mom, and I'd had it, and I kind of blew up at him, and I it was a very unpleasant thing. But the one thing that it did was that was my dad's wake up moment where he realized he had a problem. He realized that he was losing his wife, he was losing his children, and so he went down. We had this great wooded area behind my home where I grew up in New York, and he went out in the woods and just got down on his knees and began praying to God for help to help him to overcome this addiction. And this was a man that when he wasn't drinking, he was the most pleasant, the most wonderful man to be around. But once he started drinking, he became that jaded, angry kind of drunk that you hear about. And he realized that he wasn't going to be able to beat this on his own, as it were. And so he did that. He you know, gave himself up to God and put his faith in God and in Jesus Christ. And I'm happy to say that uh, that was the beginning of my dad getting sober. And my dad was sober clear up from that time until the day that he died. He was sober for well over 30 years, and it was great because once he made that change, I finally got the father that I always should have had. Um, and my dad and I became very close once he was able to overcome that addiction. So I while I haven't gone through the same battle that you have, I did go through a similar battle being the child of a parent that was addicted to alcohol, and the huge difference that it made in my father's life, because he found that higher power to call upon to help him overcome his addiction, and he did, and it lasted, and it increased his faith and his testimony and mine as well, and it just drastically improved the relationship and the marriage between my mom and my dad. And like I said, I got the dad that I always wanted to have once he was able to get behind beyond that. So I I do believe in the healing power and the strength that we can call upon God or Christ or whatever that higher power is for anybody else that's out there, because it gives me hope. It's comforting to know that we're not alone in the universe, as it were, that there is, I have that faith, I have that belief that there is something, some greater intelligence, some greater power that is out there that is aware of who I am and aware of my struggles and aware of yours and everybody else that's out there. And the people that don't subscribe to that, the people that are agnostic or atheist, I don't have any problem with that, because I've met some atheists that are oftentimes a better example of Christ-like love than people that are, regular churchgoers. So it's
This
not
is
so
true.
much that Christianity has the corner on the market for these universal values of love, compassion, and charity and things like that. But going through something like that and watching the mighty change that it brought about in my father absolutely changed my life. And it brought me closer to my dad. And so anytime I hear a story of somebody like my dad who has overcome that addiction, I mean, just hats off to you, because it's not an easy thing to do. And I know that my dad told me that he's still, even though he was sober all those years, shortly before he passed, we had a very frank discussion about it, he and I, and he's like, I there are days when I still have to fight that addiction. And but the more time that he spent, being sober, the easier every day after that became. But it was all a matter of, ultimately surrendering that willpower to that higher power that helped guide him through his recovery. And that was such a beautiful thing to see, because he blessed the lives of so many people when he finally got sober,
Right.
beginning with me and my mom. And I can tell just in what you've shared with us, and what I know that Donna Jean has shared a number of times, that you and her have been able to bless the lives of so many people. And I'm sure that a lot of that ties back into your being able to overcome that addiction. So, in so many ways, thank you for the man that you are, and for the great talent that you have, and just for the great spirit that both you and Donna Jean have. There's just such a wonderful light that both of you have, that draws me in, and I absolutely love it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And the thing is, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that with your father, but I'm also really glad that you actually were instrumental in his waking up from that and seeing the truth and what was going on in his life. Um, I always feel that we're all trying to connect with our creator, and anything that's not a connection, that's not a true spiritual connection with your creator, is going to backfire. And that's where alcohol comes in. You know, you're looking for spirituality in a bottle. It's an
Right.
artificial mechanism to get you what you really need. And what you
Yeah.
really need is that connection with God.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, Donna is another blessing in my life because she really helped me focus with laser beam vision on more the exact truth of where we're from and what our creator wants of us and who we are
Mhm.
spiritual beings.
Right.
And you know, it's really a pleasure to know you, and I'm glad that you shared that, because it's always important for people to hear these success, you know, anybody's success story. And I'm sure your father, when he was drinking, that wasn't the true man.
No,
That was
no.
just, you know, him searching for something in the wrong place, and
Yeah.
it affected him. And it's so destructive. It's so destructive.
Yeah.
It's hard to fathom, but it's just, you know, it causes so much despair and destruction in people's lives. And I'm just so grateful. And I really did not have, I'm not going to say I didn't have anything to do with it, but my part in my sobriety and my coming to Jesus was so small. It was just getting on my knees and going, "Hey, I can't do this."
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really do anything. I'm just
Mhm.
blessed to have been able to receive it. I think
Yeah.
it's just about receiving. It's not about doing. So,
Well, it's like that, and I'm apologies if I get this wrong, and I'm ashamed of myself because I served as a missionary for 2 years, so I should know this. But the scripture in James, if any of you lack wisdom, you know,
oh yeah,
ask of God, and he'll
that's
he'll he'll give it to you. The classic, knock and it shall be opened unto you. And I've found that to be so true in my own life, in so many ways. And there are so many things that take our focus off that bigger picture. Um, just life gets in the way sometimes. Everything from making sure that you can make ends meet and can pay the mortgage on your house, or am I going to have enough money to pay all the bills, and then there's everything else that goes on top of that, and it's real easy to get buried underneath all of that.
yeah,
Having worked corporate jobs many times in my life, it's easy to get buried underneath all of that. And it's one of the reasons why I ultimately chose to follow the career path for music, because one thing I remember my dad telling me when he finally attained his sobriety was, he said, "Jim, if there's one mistake that I made," he said, "don't spend any time doing a career and doing a job that you wake up every morning and you hate going to do it, because you end up bringing that home, and that drags down the entire atmosphere and the vibe, and it impacts your relationships with your family, who are the most important people in your life." And so when I decided that I wanted to make a shift towards making music, I mean, I had a very comfortable job working at the corporate level for eBay, uh, you know, 16 years ago, and I walked away from that. I walked away from a great benefits package. I walked away from a fantastic salary to follow my dream of making and producing music full time. And I'm definitely a lot poorer in the pocketbook for that. But even though all of the horrible abuse that I endured at the hands of people regarding Eminent Soul and my radio show, I still, it's what I love doing. It's where my heart is. And that made such a big difference in me being able to find my own peace. Um, and I wish it were easier to make money more consistently with music, but that was another thing, another lesson that my dad taught me was, find something that you're really good at, that you're passionate about, and figure out a way to make a living out of doing that. Um, and I figure I can't make money off of eating tacos, so I might as well do something music related, right? But
I'm
but
so glad you brought that up, because we didn't talk about this, but I struggled for years and years with the idea that being a songwriter, being a musician, a singer, whatever it is I do, an entertainer, um, was not really legit. My parents were both white collar corporate people,
Mhm.
and they didn't understand what I was doing. They didn't understand why or how or anything like that. So it took me a very long time to go, this is what you are, Chris, and it's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
completely understand.
it's a, talk about a leap of faith. I mean, going from having that comfortable cushion of that corporate 9 to 5, into a world where, you know, thank heavens I have a wife that that consistently makes a lot better money than I do. But it's given me so many opportunities, and um, if I could go back and redo a couple things, obviously I would do a number of things differently because hindsight is 2020. But being able to do what you're passionate about, I think that's at least half of the battle. Finding something that you're good at, something that you love doing, that you're passionate about, and then find a way to do that. And
Yeah.
the fact that you and Donna Jean are able to do that, and to do all these great music projects that you're involved in, just hats off to you. I mean, truly. And again, I want to drive home that point. Your music blesses so many people, and I hope you realize that, because I always get positive comments from my listeners about every time I play one of your songs. They're like, Who was that did that Danger song?" That's Christopher Anton. Wow, I gotta write that down. And um, so it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be able to play your music, and to get to know you, especially in this wonderful setting right here with the spotlight interview. And I hope that the Soul of Synth Pop listeners and the synth community get to understand your music a little better and get a little more familiar with it. And hopefully they will see all the wonderful and beautiful things in your music and in your art that May and I do, because we're such big fans. Again, not just of your music, but who you and Donna Jean are as people and as human beings. You will not find a better group of people than you and Donna Jean, and I mean that most sincerely, my friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, it's a blessing to know both of you, and it's a blessing to hear your show when you do Soul of Synth Pop. I mean, I feel the same way about you.
Well, thank you,
Uh,
thank you.
so
Right on. Well, we got to make this Utah thing happen. If you and Donna Jean ever get here, yeah, we got to figure a way to make that happen.
we will, and I'll let you know when it's happening.
Right on. And I have to ask, do you like tacos?
Of course. Who doesn't
Okay.
like tacos?
Now the important question, do you like cilantro on your tacos?
Absolutely.
See, there you go, May. He's one of us.
One of us, and safe from the robot overlords in the future. We have determined that that's going to be what's going to save you is a love of cilantro. So your friend Denny, Jim, I'm sorry.
Well,
He's out.
he's a Niners fan. What can you expect?
And Sean Kelly too. Sorry,
Right.
Sean. That
Sorry,
just,
sorry, sorry, Sean. So,
so
May, any closing thoughts or remarks for you for Christopher?
well, yeah, and hopefully the door opening behind me and 3 dogs running in doesn't suddenly interrupt me. But I think one of the aspects that I really thought of was in listening to you guys talking about doing what you love, and thinking about how we define success. And so many people do define it as monetary, financial. And I think that, like you said, getting up and doing what you love doing every day, not coming home, not hating your job is one of those important things. And I also wanted to point out just that correlation between faith and creativity, and especially music, because I always think about Psalm 100 that states, to make a joyful noise unto the Lord. And I think other arts, like, I do visual art and stuff, but I think of all these arts and creative ways that we can express what we feel and experience. I think that music, especially because it's, you can hear it, you definitely feel, I can look at a painting and feel joy, or I can feel sadness, but music will definitely carry that. And I think that there is that definite correlation. And especially when people of faith recognize, I've heard other artists say this too. Adam Collier comes to mind, that the talent that you have, it's God-given. And when you share that with others, when you get it out there, you get over your fear of keeping it to yourself, that you only magnify that in having it benefit and bless others. And I think that's an amazing thing. I did one personal experience of really just thinking I have a lot more ideas than I have time. And I remember one time driving, because that's when I could have a conversation with God, asking, gosh, when am I going to have time to like bring to fruition all these ideas that are constantly in my head? And I tell you, I heard very clearly that when you start sharing the talents I've given you with others, you will have the time to do the things you want to do. And I think the impact that that has always had on me, and I have carried that forward in, I would continue at church getting called to teach the young kids and lead activity days with the girls, and I've had plenty of opportunities to, with the women's auxiliary, to run activities and teach and share those things. And that's just one of those things, that's the way that I magnify that talent. And haven't been able to do a whole lot lately, but I've been writing more. So I guess there you go. Doing that and writing for musicians, for my friends, for the people that don't have those big marketing budgets and plans that I do. I find I find a great deal of satisfaction in just even writing a little blurb that somebody says, "Oh, thank you," and shares it and just puts it out there. And it's a gift that when I do that, and I love being able to do that. So there you go. I think it definitely, it comes down to the faith in knowing that these are talents that are given to me by my creator. And so, yeah, that thought had run through my head.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah.
Absolutely. So Christopher, tell us what's coming up in the future that we can look forward to from Christopher Anton.
Well, we're constantly working on new songs. We've had a little hiccup in everything because I had to move. So I'm a little behind schedule on some stuff, but we have releases coming, some more singles that we're going to release. I'm doing Route 101 in San Antonio, as you mentioned, my June 28th.
January sounds good too. Come on down.
Yeah. June 28th. I forget these dates sometimes. I think it's June 28th, a Friday, at Sam's. And then we're going to play in Katy, Texas. This is Christopher Anton, but we're also going to do a Route 101 set in Katy, Texas, July 20th. July 21st is my birthday, so it's going to be sort of a
sweet
birthday bash for me.
Nice. Right on. Well, like I said, one of these times I've got to catch one of your live performances, whether it's you performing your original stuff or whether it's with Speedway or Route 101. Yeah, I would love to see one of your live shows sometime, whether it's in Texas or Utah or wherever we can coordinate.
We're
I'd love
just going to have
love
to
get out
make it
there.
happen in Utah
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll have to tell Donna Jean that one of these times I have to hear, she's got to share her Sasquatch or her Bigfoot story with us one of these times. Because, the main thing I'm doing now, obviously I'm back doing a solo Synth-Pop radio show, but my primary priority is my podcast, which of course is called The Soul of the Unexplained, where we talk about, things like UFOs, UAPs, Skinwalker Ranch, all kinds of stuff like that. And so Roger, my co-host for The Soul of the Unexplained, we're always on the lookout for people that have their own encounters with, the strange and unusual kind of type things. So I would love to get Donna Jean on sometime.
We need to come on because not only did she have the Bigfoot experience, did you see the video with her?
I did.
Bigfoot?
Yes.
Okay, now that was like in 2010, but I want to say in around 2018, we saw something happening in the sky that we still can't explain. So
Wow.
that would be a good, it was really bizarre. And we still don't know what it was, but we'd have to come on and talk to you about that experience.
That's amazing. Well, you know,
Yeah.
we've got Skinwalker Ranch right here in Utah, and I'm fortunate in the fact that I know some of the guys that work out there at Skinwalker Ranch, and it's kind of crazy how the world has just kind of changed, and now UFOs and UAPs used to be this fringe topic, and now it's all totally mainstream since the that New York Times article where the Pentagon finally admitted, okay, yeah, UFOs are real. It's like,
Right.
so it's yeah, I just find that stuff really fascinating. And years ago, I didn't really place a whole lot of stock in that kind of stuff. I mean, I've always believed that there's life elsewhere in the universe, but what were the odds of any civilization out there coming here? That possible but not likely was kind of how I felt. And now that I've seen evidence of some of the things that have been leaked out recently, it's like, it really, makes you wonder, wow, we really, we're truly not alone in this universe, and we may not even be alone on this planet. And I think that's just fascinating. And so that's my new favorite topic that I talk about. And May has actually come on my podcast a number of times and has been an amazing co-host. And so yeah, we got to get you and Donna Jean on the Soul of the Unexplained sometime to talk about
Okay.
your experiences. So we'll have to set that up sometime.
Yeah, we'll do
I,
that for sure.
I think
That's cool.
with the number of artists who have had experiences or something, Claude, you're gonna have to do like a Soul of the Unexplained synth pop something,
There we go. Yeah.
round table kind of, just yeah,
Yeah.
something. So
Gosh, how cool would that be? That's a
be
great
That would
idea.
be
interesting, right?
amazing. We should. I mean, we could
Yeah,
just put everybody together
yeah.
and have a
That would
discussion about it.
that would be awesome. We got to make that happen. We'll work on that, May. We'll have to organize that. Right on. Well, again, Christopher, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and especially here on a beautiful Saturday to chat with May and I, and to give us a little glimpse into the art machine and creative mind known as Christopher Anton. So, uh, hats off to you, sir, and again, thank you for everything. And folks, please, if you haven't yet, go out and check out Christopher Anton's music. You can find it wherever fantastic music is sold. You can find him on bandcamp.com, or you can also find him through iTunes, Apple Music, again, anywhere that you find fantastic music. But please check out, especially the new single Signals that just released about a week or so ago, and show some love and appreciation to this wonderful artist that we've had here in our virtual studio and taco bar uh, tonight for this wonderful conversation. So, Christopher, thank you. Please pass along our best wishes to Donna Jean, and God bless, man. You guys are awesome.
I will. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege talking to you both. Really. I really mean that.
Right on. And folks, don't forget that May and I will be back next week with another Soul of Synth-Pop Spotlight series. Next week, we're going to be having the pleasure of chatting with Sadkin from the great state of Minnesota, if I'm not
Minnesota.
mistaken. So be looking for that. And we will see you soon, folks. Don't forget, next live broadcast of the Soul of Synth-Pop radio show, The Church of Soul, will be on Sunday, June. There we go, January, right? June 16th. So, with that, folks, love one another, take care of one another, be nice to bunnies, never let a drum machine, vocoder, or synthesizer go unwanted or unloved. Adopt one today. And of course, eat as many tacos as you can. And with that, May, thank you for joining me. And Christopher, just have an awesome weekend, and we will chat with you soon. We'll see you, folks. See ya.